Hey folks, so on Monday we heard Donald Trump at the United Nations General Assembly. He gave a speech. There's a lot in the speech that I've responded to, given my opinion about on Twitter and whatnot. But one particular section of the speech really got to me, and I felt like it needed to be refuted. So Donald Trump was talking about Venezuela and the problems that they're having, and then from there he went on this tirade talking about, he said that socialism and communism have destroyed every nation where they've ever been implemented. The only result of socialism and communism is poverty and tyranny and such. Well, it's very funny because, you know, just a few days after he says that, I open up China Daily, and we see here in China Daily that China just tested the fastest train in the world. This is the train that goes from Shanghai to Beijing. It's a high-speed train, a bullet train. It's the fastest train in the entire world, and that this train was created by the China Railway Corporation, which is a government-controlled railway system. So a country led by the Communist Party with a state-controlled company, and this state-controlled company has just created the fastest train in the entire world. Also, it's worth noting that half of the steel in the world is created in China by the government-controlled steel industry. Look at what China was in 1949. China was what they called the sick man of Asia. Huge amounts of poverty, huge amounts of drug addiction. The country was just miserable. Today, China is the second largest economy in the entire world. I'm not seeing the failure there. The state-run economy in which the Communist Party is in control, in which they have 5-year plans, socialism with Chinese characteristics, hasn't destroyed China. It looks like China is far more powerful than it ever has been. This is kind of the opposite of what Donald Trump said. Furthermore, let's talk about another country. Let's talk about the Soviet Union. In 1917, the Soviet Union, Russia, was an impoverished country, mainly an agricultural economy, huge amounts of illiteracy and poverty. The Soviet Union, the 5-year plans made them the world's leading producers of steel. They defeated the Nazi invaders. They eventually became the first country ever to enter outer space. So again, I'm not seeing the complete failure of socialism and communism there. You can even look in the third world, you know, in some of these deeply impoverished countries. Let's talk about, you know, Cuba, for example. Cuba is a very small island, yet all over the world, Cuban doctors are providing medical aid to people. Cuba has an amazing reputation. You go to any corner of the world, people know about Fidel Castro. They know about the Cuban Revolution, the Cuban doctors, the Cuban literacy volunteers go all across the world and people know them. It's just very obvious that what Donald Trump said is not the truth. You know, Venezuela is facing their own problems right now. They're having an internal crisis. It's an economy centered around oil, and then opposition forces that don't like the government have utilized that, and then there are some political problems there. But to say that the entire history of socialism or communism can be summed up by what's happening in Venezuela right now is just insane. You know, socialism transformed Russia into a world industrial power. Socialism has transformed China into the second largest economy in the entire world. The success of socialism is pretty well documented and unprecedented. The reason that Trump got away with saying what he said is because we hear this in the USA all the time. You know, we all learned this in school. Oh, socialism fails, you know, no one ever invents anything. Nobody ever, you know, has any innovation. This is just obviously and very demonstrably false. You know, socialism has been pretty successful. And there were certainly problems in the former Soviet Union that led to its collapse, but to say that it destroyed Russia, that's pretty obviously not the case. You know, some of the height of their strength, the Soviet Union was quite successful in many areas. China today is quite successful in many areas. It's just not the truth, and you have to kind of look beyond this cliche we constantly hear in the United States.